Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Ah, yes, my friends, it is the week of Christmas. Here we are, the day before Christmas Eve. I guess it's Christmas Eve. This is the last day that we will be in this week. Gary Varvel is filling in with the special Christmas Eve message tomorrow. And, of course, Christmas Day will be out. Airing encore episodes both Thursday and Friday, my friends. So, yesterday we had the interview. By the way, I welcome you to share your thoughts on those. This is something, the interviews that we're going to do a little bit more of than we used to. So I'm bringing on a variety of people. Yesterday was someone that I didn't agree with, of course, when it came to the issue of belief in God, but I like to have these conversations. I think that they're necessary in this climate that we're in, and so you can always share your thoughts on how those go. Todd at toddhuffshow.com is my email. So today I just want to wrap up. There's a couple of articles I've seen out there that I want to address. We're at the Christmas season. There's there's discussions about the Christian faith as it pertains to the MAGA movement and all this sort of stuff. And I just want to address those. There's a couple of articles that are in the stack of stuff, which, we have a page for each episode that we do where you can go and see the links to things, the transcript, a summary, and that sort of thing, and a link to listen online to anything you may have missed. But anyway, the links will be there. So that's where we're headed this morning, my friends. And by the way, if you're dealing with discomfort or you're tired of living off of prescriptions and managing the side effects, you're not alone. A lot of folks are looking for something natural they can trust. That's why I want you to check out Christopher's Organic Botanicals, a family-run natural kratom company rooted in truth, tradition, and transparency. They partner directly with farmers in Indonesia. They lab test everything before it ever reaches your hands. There's no hype, synthetics, or certainly no funny business, my friends. Just the real thing done right. And so they test it. It's responsibly sourced, which is important to note because a lot of the horror stories you hear come from shady sellers and people who are peddling synthetic garbage that isn't even real kratom. Research is important. You can research there. You can research elsewhere. Research there on their website, Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com, or elsewhere as well. And once you're comfortable and once you decide that this is something that is a good fit for you, you can start with their Kratom Starter Pack. Use coupon code ToddHuff to save 10%. By the way, this is not legal in all 50 states yet. It's being actually in Indiana. I mentioned this the other day. This has been introduced. There's been legislation introduced. It hasn't gotten out of committee in previous years, but maybe this coming year it could go from a illegal product in the state to a regulated product in the state. But most of our listeners aren't in. That might surprise you. Most of our listeners are not in the great state of Indiana, even though that's my own home state. Regardless, coupon code ToddHuff saves you 10% on your first purchase. Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. That's Christopher'sOrganicBotanicals.com. Truth, tradition, transparency. Okay, let us begin, my friends. I got a couple of articles I want to get to, or try to get to here today, especially on the eve of Christmas Eve. We're of course in the season where faith matters. Actually, I do want to mention this. This was in the stack. I got a short stack today. People Magazine. I just want to address this, and this may upset some folks. I don't know. But I do feel the need to address this. People.com You may have seen Turning Point had I don't know what that event is called. Amfest. Is that what it is? Amfest, a lot of speakers on stage, whatever. A lot of people that you're familiar with, and so forth. And a lot of thoughts, I guess, come in the wake of that. But Megyn Kelly was speaking there, and she said, now Megyn Kelly's Catholic. I know many of you are Catholic. I don't listen. I'm a Protestant. I have had friends, of course, who are Catholic. I'm not Catholic. I've been to a Catholic wedding. I may have been to a Catholic mass one other time or something. It's but I've never really been raised in the Catholic Church. I came to Jesus. I've shared this on here when I was 16 years old. Is that right? 1993. Yeah, 16 years old. I guess just shy of 16. But regardless, with really no religious background, I came, or I should say, Jesus called me and made the gospel clear to me at a Fellowship of Christian Athletes football camp in Marshall, Indiana in 1993. Ironically, since we're talking about Catholicism here, the gentleman that invited me to that camp was Catholic. He, our football coach at the time, named Tom Blank, invited a lot of kids on the team to the Fellowship of Christian Athletes football camp. That's where I first heard the gospel. Now, as a kid, I would say that I was raised in an area and in a time where biblical values mattered to people, even if they didn't go to church. It was still considered, I would say, the moral roadmap for people. Although a relationship with Jesus and, of course, the stories in the Bible were something I wasn't taught. I did go to a vacation Bible school a few times as a kid. I did attend weekday religious education, which was a program that our school offered back. I'm guessing they still do it today. I don't know. But you could go to that as a student once a week, I think, and it was an optional thing, and study the Bible and that sort of thing. I did those sorts of things, but not raised in church. Regardless, some of this is foreign to me when I read you this headline. And I just want to address, I don't want to spend a lot of time here, but this, again, we're a couple of days before Christmas, we're celebrating the birth of Jesus, although it's almost certain that this is not the time that he was actually born. This is just the time that we celebrate it. Regardless, headline here, Megyn Kelly says she's prayed to Charlie Kirk, quote, so many times to give her guidance since his death. You know that I respected Charlie Kirk, and his death, as I think it's impacted many of us in a lot of ways. I've talked about this. I've talked about how it's caused me to pause and to rethink some of the things that we're doing, how we can do them better, the urgency with which we need to get the message of truth out into this culture, how we need to get it in front of people where they are. It's not enough just to have a radio show, podcast, the Toddcast here, and expect people to find it. We've got to be more proactive in how we get this out there. And there's things that we're working on, believe me, behind the scenes. And I think Charlie Kirk did a fantastic job of that. He did a lot of good things for proclaiming truth and ultimately the truth of the gospel of Jesus Christ. But I will tell you, and I know Catholicism, there is saints and all that sort of thing, and it's as a Protestant, this just doesn't compute for me. And this is please don't misunderstand. It's not disrespectful. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody here. I'm trying to be what I would say is biblically sound and say, first of all, Charlie Kirk was a really good guy who did some really good things. And I think we could all learn from some of the things that he did and said and taught and so forth. But to pray to Charlie, it doesn't compute to me. You pray to your Father. I know this is upsetting to some, but it just doesn't compute to me. Why would you pray to Charlie Kirk for guidance when you have access through prayer to the creator of the universe? It doesn't make sense to me that that's the way that people, and I don't listen. I'm not questioning her motives. It just doesn't add up to me. When I read the headline, I saw it on social media here a couple of days ago, and I just wanted to mention this. That's not how I look at this. And I know some people would say, well, if he was here, you would sit down with him and and talk with him. Well, sure, I would do that. But if I'm going to seek guidance by prayer, why would I not seek to talk to the one who knows everything, which, by the way, is none of us. None of us, by the way. When it's time for me to go, don't be trying to seek me in prayer, my friends. Seek the Father. Seek Jesus. Pray in the Spirit. Don't seek guidance from me when I'm dead and gone. Anyway, that struck me as odd. I just wanted to mention that before I got into these other things. Headline here at The Guardian says this: we're pastors, the fight against MAGA Christianity starts locally. This is written, I think there's a tandem of people here that wrote this. Their names are Doug Pagitt, again, if I mispronounce, forgive me, Pagitt, Lori Walke, Walke, there's an E on the end of that. Trump's movement has used the Christian faith to fuel oppression, this article says. This is an op-ed, by the way. Here's how we are standing against it. It's interesting to me when you look at the arguments presented by people on the left side of the aisle. And I don't know these pastors. I don't know their theology or whatever, but I definitely have problems with the premise here. Trump has used the Christian faith to fuel oppression. Trump is fueling oppression, using the faith of followers of Jesus to fuel oppression. Those are bold words. I challenge the premise in every conceivable way here. This makes no sense to me in a sane world. And so they've created this narrative that says Trump is using the Christian faith to fuel the oppression, and so we're fighting against it. That's how they say it. I'm just going to share their words, and we'll talk about this along the way. Donald Trump wants us to believe that the war on Christianity is spreading across the globe. The U.S. president recently sounded the alarm on, quote, the mass slaughter of Christians in Nigeria, while threatening a U.S. invasion of the African nation. We shouldn't be surprised. Pause everything for a moment. Listen, I haven't gone lately, but there are sites where you can go and find information on the persecution of Christians around the world. One of those sites is, I guess it's now persecution.com. The organization is called the Voice of the Martyrs. And usually they produce, I think, a yearly report on persecution around the world. And there's a map here on their homepage. I'm looking at it right now. That says Niger. Hold on here. Clicked on the wrong country. Nigeria. I'm reading right now from persecution.com. This is the Voice of the Martyrs website. These are individuals who have committed their lives, their professional, their what they do as a vocation here, to educate us on what's happening in countries around the world when it comes to persecution for Christian faith. They put here mass slaughter in quotations, these pastors. I just want to read to you what the Voices of the Martyrs has to say here. They say this: Nigeria is almost evenly divided between Muslims, who are the majority in the north, and Christians, who are the majority in the south. There are more than 80 million professing Christians in Africa's most populous nation. The fruit both pioneer mission work and freed slaves who returned to the continent from Europe with the gospel following the 1833 abolition of slavery in England. Foreign missionary activity in the North has declined significantly since 2008 as a result of the emergence of the Islamic militant group Boko Haram. Crazy, insane, this is my words, not theirs. These are crazy, insane, radical Islamic terrorists. Based in the North, Boko Haram is affiliated with Al-Qaeda. That's, of course, Osama bin Laden's outfit there, and has aligned itself with the self-proclaimed Islamic State. That's ISIS. So that's who Boko Haram is aligned with, affiliated with, and so forth. The people that are cutting folks' heads off and torturing them, and brutal. Not just obviously killing is bad enough, but they're torturing. They're trying to make this as prolonged. The suffering is prolonged and as dramatic as possible. I've seen people dragged behind vehicles. Just brutal stuff here. Boko Haram has weakened somewhat in the Northeast. It still carries out devastating attacks in the Christian communities and on army units in the region. Boko Haram is also reportedly backing ongoing attacks. Wait a minute. I didn't think they put this in quotations in their stupid little article here. Devastating attacks in the Christian communities and on army units. Boko Haram is also reportedly backing ongoing attacks on Christian villages by militant Fulani Muslims who have concentrated their attacks in the central region of Nigeria. Terrorist groups and other Muslims in the north want to drive Christians out of the region and continue their push to create a separate nation governed by Islamic law. There you go. That's, of course, Sharia law, which is where we have people here in this country, Muslims here all around the world, calling for Sharia law. The major religion in Nigeria, 51% of Nigerians, according to, again, the Voice of the Martyrs here, are Christians. The nation is divided between Christians and Sunni Muslims, with most Christians in the south and most Muslims in the north. Boko Haram the Boko Haram Islamic extremist group and militant Fulani Muslims both attack Christians throughout northern Nigeria. So it's got information. It has this on every country around the world. And there's a massive problem there. In fact, the hostile nations to Christianity around the world, hostile, not just, listen, it's not just, there's restricted nations. If you look at the map here, these are countries that make it difficult for the Christian faith, people who practice Christianity. They restrict it. They make it difficult. They don't give you true freedom of religion. But nations that are hostile to the gospel or the faith include the following countries. It's going to take me a minute to get through these. Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Togo, Benin, Nigeria, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mozambique, Malawi, Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia. Those are all in, of course, Africa. We have some hostilities in Mexico, some hostilities in Nicaragua, some hostilities in Colombia, some hostilities if you go to the South Pacific, in Indonesia, in the Philippines, in Nepal, in Asia, and in Bangladesh, in Asia. That's what they have on their map. The idea that, listen, Christians around the world, I'm not just talking here in the United States, because it's different here. There certainly is a war on truth. There's certainly a lot of hatred directed at Christians. I'm not saying that that's not the case, but it's nothing compared to what people face around the world. Instead of being so upset at Trump here for responding to what's happening in Nigeria, why don't these pastors who probably, get on their virtue signaling high horses here, which I'm sure they will in this article, about something Trump said or done or a way he behaved. What about the actual extermination and murder and genocide happening around the world when it comes to groups like Christians in some countries? But they continue here. We shouldn't be surprised, they say, that Trump wanted to use the mass slaughter, which they put in quotations, of Christians in Nigeria to threaten the U.S. invasion of that African nation. This falls, they say, right in line with Trump's ongoing attempts to project MAGA Christianity onto the global stage and crack down on religious freedom. Who's cracking down on the freedom here? Isn't it the people who are murdering Christians in Africa? Not a word about that. Not a word about that. Pastor Doug Pagitt, Pastor Lori Walk, no word on that. Just quotations about the slaughter. You saying it's not happening? Are you so blinded by your politics that you don't care about that real problem? This is sickening to me. His attempts to project MAGA Christianity. What is it? Listen, you can have objections to using military force in an instance like this, I should say. But to pretend like this is no big deal and that this is being blown out of proportion by Trump is, I think, a gross under exaggeration, I guess I would say. I don't know. It's not dealing with the reality of the circumstances here. So more to say about this. I'm up, my friends, up against the clock here, which is telling me I've got to wrap things up this segment. And as a skilled and highly trained broadcast professional, I am going to oblige and make sure that we respect the time clock. Friends, one of the biggest challenges that we have as conservatives is finding ways to ensure that our values align with the way that we live our lives. That includes how we invest our money. Listen, I don't want to make this unnecessarily complicated and so forth, but the realities exist. The realities exist that our money, the money that we give to people or invest in places, it ends up supporting things. And if it's doing something that's diametrically opposed to our values, I think we should at least be aware of that. That's why I love what the team at 48 Financial is doing. They specialize in biblically responsible investing. That means they screen out companies that don't align with our faith and values so that we're not funding things that go completely against what we believe in. They do the heavy lifting, helping align our investments with our purpose, with our goals. The best part, they'll help you find out if your current investments reflect your values. All you have to do is to take a quick assessment at 48financial.com/Todd. That's 48financial.com/Todd. 48 Financial, because your money should work for your values. Friends, I've got to take a quick time out. You're listening here to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Just going through this article here, published in at The Guardian, where a couple of pastors are more upset at what they call MAGA Christianity and Donald Trump, and they appear to be at the people slaughtering and murdering Christians in Nigeria, which is mind-boggling to me. Mind-boggling. Blind rage, my friends, will cause one to conclude things like these pastors. They continue, MAGA Christianity, they write, represents a self-serving, commercialized version of the Christian faith, putting power over service and empathy, and it is everywhere in our federal government. Let me pause for a moment. Let me pause for a moment. Number one, there's a lot of conflating going on here. I don't know what they mean when they're trying to brand this Trump and people who voted for Trump who are Christians as quote unquote MAGA Christians. I would never in a million years consider myself a MAGA Christian. Listen, my friends, I am a Christian. I am a follower of Jesus. There's no other descriptor. Sometimes I would say conservative Christian to communicate that we're not in the quote-unquote progressive crowd, which is really regressive. But I don't need any other disclaimer here, or I guess term to quantify my faith. I've been a follower of Jesus since 1993, long before MAGA was a thing, and I'll be a follower of Jesus as long as he tarries and as long as my life on this planet is, I'm here and living my life. I will follow him long after MAGA, the MAGA movement or the Trump MAGA leadership or whatever you want to call it ceases to be an active thing here in this country. And I'm not here. Listen, I know that there's commercialized versions of Christianity. There are some things that go on in churches that are clearly not biblical. All over the churches the problems are all over the place, right? I mean, some water down the gospel and don't want to really address the culture head on. Other denominations or certain pastors or whatever you want to call these folks will go to the pulpit wearing their rainbow attire. It's all over the place, my friends. I saw a video of a pastor recently coming out as trans from the pulpit. I don't know if you saw that, Oz, but regardless, I mean, there's lots of problems. This is not to say there's no problems with American Christianity. That's not the point. The point here is to say, I guess, that people who voted for Trump and who call themselves Christians represent a self-serving, commercialized version of the Christian faith. That's a bold statement. It's a bold statement to make. My version of Christianity is not commercialized. I just putting power over service and empathy. I don't know. First of all, I don't know if the word, maybe it is. I don't know that empathy is a word that's in the Bible. Not to say there's anything wrong with that. Sometimes people think that they're morally superior because they are empathetic, which of course illustrates another problem with the human heart and pride. But politics, my friends, the government is about power. I've said this on this program for a long, long time. Government is force. Government is force. That's why we want as little of it as possible. We want as little government as possible because government is force. Force is not a good thing. We want the government to be able to do what the government should be doing, but nothing more. This is why a growing government matters so much. You want, if you look at the political continuum, on the one end, you've got total control by the authoritarians. On the other end, you've got absolute anarchy. And so both of those extremes are problems. So we say, look, clearly, if we could live someplace, we would have it be the one end that's freedom, but freedom with protecting people. There has to be a sense of law and order, and just a society has to be able to develop. You just can't have a complete free for all and all that would come from that. God instituted government, by the way. It doesn't mean that God likes what all these government officials have done. That's not the case at all. But government is something that God created for us to manage our lives here this side of heaven. And so power is government. We just want to make it limited. This is what people just either intentionally don't understand this or don't really sit down and just think about this. Government is ultimately force. Government, where the government steps in and we have given it authority to do something, we've basically said, you're in charge of this, we're not. Right? That's why it's important that we have the consent of the governed here in our nation. So, and again, government should be governing. What do you mean serve? I understand public service. By the way, where were these folks when people were caught abusing their power? Maybe they were out there. I don't know, but I don't remember reading their articles. Where were they when people were corruptly abusing their powers or trying to empower themselves? Where were they there? That's certainly not service. But they continue. They say that MAGA Christianity is everywhere in our federal government. In February, Trump announced a task force led by Pam Bondi with the goal of rooting out anti-Christian bias. What's wrong with that? Again, if there are anti-whatever biases, I don't understand what is wrong with trying to eradicate that. I mean, the idea that Christianity has been the focus of cultural attack, or even in some cases governmental. I don't want to call it persecution. Maybe the beginning stages of real persecution. I don't know. But certainly some organizations and Christians have been targeted. Have we not seen? I know it's another country, but what's happened in Canada or the UK, to where you can't preach the gospel, you can't share the truth in some instances without fear of being arrested. You can't pray. There's places you can't pray even in your heart and mind, not even verbally. How is that? Where are these folks in places like that? We should be rooting out bias that's baked in to our government. There are people that hate Christians. There are people who hate me. I've seen them. I saw them recently at the State House. Regardless, how does this mean it's self-serving MAGA Christianity? I think Christians have seen these things happening for a long time and realize they have to be stopped. What's wrong with stopping them? Why should we let them continue? We've got the full power to stop the nonsense. I don't understand any of this. In September, they write, Trump announced his plans to protect prayer in schools. What is the big deal about that? Do they not have, what's their biblical education? What's their education on America's Christian heritage and the role of prayer and faith in the very foundations of our republic? Where have these folks been? It's like they just woke up and have no idea that these things are happening, or that they're bad. Are they against praying in schools? What is going on here? Are they not familiar with the First Amendment? They're not familiar with the story of Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, or whatever. These are pastors. What are they talking about here? Later that month, they write, talking about Trump issued a memorandum identifying anti-Christianity as a potential driver of terrorism. Well, listen, yes. What is so hard to believe about that? Do they not pay attention to what other groups say? It is remarkable to me. Of course these things can be a driver of terrorism. Why would they not? Are they unfamiliar with the lack of hatred? The Bible says, don't be surprised when the world hates you, my friends, because it first hated him, Jesus. What in the world? Where have these pastors been? Who educated these folks? What Bible are they reading here? These, they write, are not just one-off incidents. I don't know that any of that is an incident. What are you talking about? This is a national effort to push a MAGA Christianity agenda on Americans, and we're already seeing the consequences. They're not seeing anything. These people are blinded to reality. I don't even know what they're trying to say here. Friends, I got to take a break. Let me ask you something, though. Would you rather take when I was a kid, played the game Would You Rather with my good friend JJ. Would you rather, who knows what he was going to ask me, but would you rather take 2 Solti soft gels a day or spend hours in your doctor's office talking about your cholesterol? I know what I would take. That's why I have Solti here in the Huff household. It's all natural, clinically proven dietary supplement that lowers cholesterol. No prescriptions, no doctor's visits. Again, not that there's anything wrong with that. There may be a time absolutely to do those things, but this is a good first step. It's not a drug. All you have to do is take 2 soft gels a day. It's very simple, very painless. It's helped a lot of people that may be able to do the same for you. Solti.com is the website, SOLTEA, Solti.com. Promo code Todd's going to save you 50% off your first order and get you free shipping to boot. Time out, though, for me, my friends. Back here. Welcome back, my friends. Final segment here before we are off a few days for Christmas. Again, Gary Varvel will be in tomorrow, Christmas Eve, with a special Christmas Eve message. We will have encore. There we go. Encore episodes of the program, Christmas Day and on Friday. Friends, ever notice how some families seem to have a plan that lasts for generations? It's not by accident. Full Suite Wealth works with people who want their wealth to make a difference for years to come. Their team brings together high-level investment strategies like private equity, credit, and option strategies with expert legal guidance along the way. It's all about making sure your vision becomes a reality for the people you love today, tomorrow, the days to come. If you're looking to do more than just manage your money, if you want to leave your mark, if you want to build something that's lasting, take a look at Full Suite Wealth. FullSuiteWealth.com. Jason and his team are there to take great care of you, my friends. Build your legacy. Secure your future. Going back to this article, I don't have a lot of time, shortest segment here, but they continue here. They say, despite the Bible's clear call to, quote, love thy neighbor, the MAGA movement has used its version of the Christian faith to oppress immigrants. Oppress immigrants. First of all, nobody's being oppressed. There is a law. Do you know that we are a nation of laws? Book of Romans talks about submitting to the authorities. The authorities here are not so much the people in office. I don't think that's the right way of looking. You should respect them. Don't misunderstand me. But the authorities here is the rule of law. The laws on the books are exactly what's happening in this country. They've just been ignored for so long. And they think it's some virtue to not enforce the law. If you are here in this country illegally, you can be deported. That's the consequence. They'll say, well, it's not a crime and all this sort of stuff. It's against the law. And it is something that if you're found to be here illegally, you can absolutely be deported. That is the law. How is that oppression? And how are they using their Christian faith to oppress immigrants, to oppose the rights of women? Oh, yes, the rights of women. You know, the Bible does talk about, in the New Testament, Paul writes about it, women submitting to their husband. Well, that's upsetting to a lot of folks. I think that there's a misunderstanding about what that really means. I think there's a misunderstanding. Feminism is so insidious. I think it's even for those of us who seek the truth. Feminism, I've come to realize this, has done a number on this society, on our culture, on our men and women, by the way. Submission doesn't mean that you cease to have a voice or an opinion or anything like that. It is submitting to the leadership of your husband, who, by the way, in that same passage, the Bible says he's supposed to give his life for his wife. I feel like that's a little bit more serious of an instruction there. And of course, those things are necessary. Everybody says, well, I'm not submitting to him. I'm not giving my life for her. Shut it and do what you're supposed to do, because that's the order and design here. What do you mean oppress? Or what is it? What are they saying here? They've opposed the rights of women because they can't murder their children. What in the world? Where would you have been, pastors, when the edict was given by the Egyptian emperor, the Pharaoh, to murder all the newborn babies? Would you have been angry with the Hebrew midwives? Go back to the story in Exodus with the birth of Moses. Would you have been angry that these women were not following the edict of the emperor, the Pharaoh, to murder these babies? Where were you for that? Where were you when it was done? This sort of thing was done when Jesus was born too. Herod knew that there was a king that was born, a king that the Jewish people were looking forward to, and he wanted to make sure that he killed this king and he didn't have any opposition. He failed. Jesus and his family fled to Egypt. But what are they talking about? Opposing the rights of women and condemn the LGBTQ community. Folks, I have nothing in common with. I don't know what their ideology is or their theology, more importantly here. But forgive me here. Let's see if we can just offend everybody today. But the LGBTQ community, listen, condemnation is not my job necessarily, but to be able to say that something is sinful, that we have to have the right to do that as Christians, my friends. It's not to condemn the people, it's to call out sin. The whole purpose of Christianity is to seek forgiveness and to repent from my sin and to cease to be as much as possible this side of heaven that person that lived in sin. I should turn from it. I shouldn't embrace it. I shouldn't say don't talk bad about it. I should say let's admit what it is and let's turn from it. Let's agree with God that it is wrong. These folks do a lot of damage. You don't have to go out and just berate people constantly. I understand, but to say that you can't call out sin and call people to repentance, I would say that is the antithesis, antithetical to the gospel. The gospel is for everybody, my friends. Jesus has come to this world. We celebrate his birth this week and here in a couple days. And it doesn't matter, all these things matter certainly, but wherever you are today, it doesn't matter. Jesus died for you, whatever you believe politically, religiously. That relationship with Christ and the beginning of the transformation he can bring upon you is critical this Christmas season. I got to go. Merry Christmas, SDG.